it's probably through large fault of my own of not wanting to let down that guard and show them who I really am. And at work, we used to have cameras on our phones. So when you'd call someone, you'd see their face automatically. And so one of my friends would call me and be like, "Yo, Mash, you free?" And I used to be like, "Hi, how are you?" And my accent would just switch up. And I remember at one point, I was working quite late at work and I was by myself. And someone asked me a question and I answered it in such a way that was so unauthentic that I was like, it's like my soul left my body and I was like, what did you just say? like I'm not even going to bait myself out how I responded to his question, but he asked me a question and I responded and I was like, I would never speak like that. So why am I speaking like that? I just felt very fake. And so the last 4 years really taught me that actually you don't necessarily have to become a complete different version of yourself. There is a hybrid, there is a middle ground.
Suleiman,
Southend.
how's your week, brother?
Oh, we messed it up. We messed it up. Because I wanted to ask you how was your week first, so we need to do that again.
Calm, we got the same trim, bro. It's calm today. It's all good. It's all going on.
By the way, new trim, how comes? Just like a change.
It wasn't just.
Oh, was
No,
that unintentional?
No, I went to do Umrah recently, so I went to go cut my hair.
mashallah.
Yeah.
I
All
was
the
thinking
jokes
that.
go now.
Yeah.
You got one job. He's gonna violate it. So yeah,
mashallah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
First
It was first time going.
Okay.
Yeah, it was special, man. It was a special experience.
Did you go by yourself?
Now I went with a group, like a community group. And yeah, came back to London just over a week ago. It was interesting coming back. It was. I think when you spend over 10 days in a place that has a very different culture and your routine is very different, it can be a bit disorientating when you kind of like return back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say the highlight of my week is just. This is gonna sound so weird, but knowing what my head looks like. Do you know what I mean? Like more time, my entire life I've not known what my head looks like. I've never been able to touch my head. I've never been able to see my hairline, like just see the shape of my head. So.
And what do you think? What's the verdict?
Yeah. Obviously, a couple of people have complimented. A couple of people have said, "Don't ever do that again." So, but yeah, Southend, how was your week, bro?
My week, we're in November now, and for me, like October, November is always a part of the year where I find myself like comparing where I'm at right now with where I was at the start of last year, because for me it's like October, November is like the beginning of the academic year. And I feel like even if I'm not at school, I always regard it as like the beginning of something.
Yeah.
So that's, I would say, like the mood or like the moment I'm in right now because of November.
I'm interested to know, Mash, as someone you left uni a few years ago, you've been working for a few years, does September still kind of ring similar bells? Like, do you still kind of think about September as the beginning of the academic year, or when you start working, does that kind of become erased?
Long gone.
That's it every day.
The only thing that I associate with exams is May time. May, June, July. The depressing months of like revision all day, missing the summer days when your friends are out. That's what I cherish now as a working person. The winter I kind of associate with, if anything, holidays and going back, family being off, everyone getting around the table, having dinner. Christmas is the one time that my dad's off for the first time. He does the Christmas cooking. We go to Birmingham, and it's just all a good laugh. But yeah, no, May time, that's a depressing time for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, I remember everyone who had a birthday at school around May, they got no love, man. They got no love, man. It was peak for them.
Plus, when Ramadan hits in May,
trust
you're
me.
gone.
Yeah.
You're gone.
It's sad.
It's a very sad day.
People forgetting your birthday. I said, who's revised for that exam? Nah, it's true, man. It's true.
Mash, how's your week?
My week was good. So I just returned from the UAE after a week there for my friend's wedding. So I spent a week there. Spent a lot of money. At this moment in time, I'm just a very unserious candidate at the moment. I'm just living. I'm just going from holiday to holiday. But now it's come. I've got exams coming up, so I need to pattern my life, get serious. But the week was good. It was just, if I were to summarize it, it was, so I went to the UAE, Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Very much a content city. So you're just there for vibes and taking photos and posting it on Instagram. But if you want to go there once every now and then, it's great. It's just great being in a Muslim country more than anything, and having easy access to halal food, going to any masjid on the street. That's the beautiful aspect of the Middle East. Other than that, it's just a very superficial country. But no, it was great. Celebrated my friend's wedding. Stayed with a friend who I haven't seen in a year or so. She took us to all the sweet spots of Dubai that you'd never probably hear of. And then came back to gloomy London.
That's it. What do both of you think about the concept of a vacation wedding, or what's it called, vacation wedding or destination wedding? Like, what do you think about that as a concept? Like, were the couple, were any of them from that part of the world, or
No, they're both from Ilford.
you know what? Let's get the wedding in Dubai. Why not?
They're just like, you know what? We want to go international,
That's
so
it.
let's go Dubai. No, they I think COVID and other reasons, they just didn't want to be in the UK.
Right.
So pros and cons to an international wedding are you don't. So it was a Pakistani wedding, so they didn't have to invite next man to their wedding.
Oh,
so it was quite deliberate. So only people that were close to you.
It's a natural filtration system, innit? If you're not going to pay for the ticket, you're not a real one. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly. My personal thoughts on a destination wedding is probably I wouldn't have one, just because it's more about the people that are there, less so about destination. So it could be literally at home in Southend. It could be in London. It could be anywhere. So long as I have the most important people witnessing my marriage, then I'm fine. Doesn't have to be anything grand or such. But I see why people would have destination weddings. I mean, one of my friends, so I went to her wedding in Tunisia, and she married a Palestinian. And so they had a week in Palestine for a wedding and a week in Tunisia for the wedding. And I went to the Tunisian part of the wedding. And I can see why, when there are two different cultures coming together, it seems the natural thing to do to celebrate both cultures in your home country. This one, my friends are both from Ilford. Dubai was just vibes. It was good vibes. Yeah. But no, family is probably what would draw me to it. Any kind of wedding. What about you guys?
Any thoughts?
No strong or immediate thoughts come to mind. I think it'd just be circumstantial. I feel like there's definitely, when I think about, for example, Sudan and attending weddings in Sudan, there's definitely like a communal element where it's almost like it's not really about who's invited. It's like the fact that there's a wedding, the whole community is invited, whether you want to invite them or not.
Open invite.
Exactly. It's like there's a wedding, we're here. Yeah. Where's the food at? And it's like it's so funny because they almost have a right for food. Like, you have to feed them because you've decided to have a wedding here. So like those little things, I just find that like an interesting difference from, I suppose, having it here and then having it in another destination. Yeah. So those are some of my initial thoughts.
Yeah. I asked the question because I went to a destination wedding as well this summer. I went to Cairo for a friend's wedding, and his family are from Sudan. So it was just practically very easy to get his family from Sudan to Egypt rather than to the UK for like visa stuff. So it was nice. It was nice to be there, and it just made me think about it. Previously, I never even thought about kind of ever that being a possibility, but it's becoming more common, isn't it?
Has your opinion changed?
Has my opinion changed? I think he was able to book out a really nice hotel for very cheap compared to UK prices. So like, there's an economic argument to be made potentially. But I don't know. I think for me, there's a language thing. Like, I don't speak fluent Arabic, so I don't know if I would go to that part of the world unless English was that kind of the main language. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not particularly passionate about either or. Yeah.
Mash, you mentioned Southend. Tell us about like young Mash growing up
in Southend.
Yeah.
Firstly, do you know where Southend is?
I don't.
Had you ever heard of it before I mentioned Southend?
I've been there once.
Yeah, once.
I was in a car. I can't remember. I just remember motorway.
Yeah, it's calm.
Home motorway.
And there's
Southend.
a beach at the end, and that's it.
Oh yeah.
So most people tend to come to Southend just for the beach, and then they come back to London. So Southend, born and raised. It's like a small coastal town in Essex. We grew up in a block of flats, me and my siblings, big family. There's 6 of us, so 4 siblings. Now 5 of us, 7 siblings. But at the time, for the first 10 years of my life, we were in a block of flats. And it was the best years of my life. Literally, we were all on top of each other, but it's the beauty that comes with it. And there's two things that I associate with my childhood, and that's those first 10 years in the block flats, because of the friends that you make in that area. We literally, the doors would be left open. In the summer, you're out and about in different houses. I'd be stealing food from the fridge to give it to my friends. Sometimes my mum wouldn't let us out. So like in the summer, we used to have water fights, and because my dumb mum didn't want to have to deal with me or my sisters drenched in water, she would basically say, no, you're not going out. So what we used to do is open our windows and get buckets of water and drench our friends instead. So it's those types of memories that I cherish, because you're so young, innocent, carefree. It was safer back then. Obviously, I understand now why people can't necessarily do that. But yeah, we'd just be in and out of each other's houses. One of the girls above us, her name was Shy. Her dad was a bit dodge, but one day he brought a car, like a wrecked car, back to the flats, and he'd be like, "Guys, I need to chuck this away. Who wants to jump on this car?" So there was like 10 kids all jumping on this car. Time of my life. But it was a very communal way of living. So that was the first 10 years of my life. And when we used to have cousins come round, there'd be like 50 people in a 2-bed flat, all sleeping like sardines. And do you know what? It was calm. Like I'd be jumping over my cousins just to get to the cereal in the morning. But it was beautiful. And then when we had my younger sister, who's now 15, so she's 10 years in age difference, we then moved out of the flat into a house. So yeah, they were the first kind of formative years of my life in Southend. So that was up until primary. I then went to secondary school. Secondary was an interesting one. I was a very quiet student, in my own lane, just knew I had to do well in school. I think with most immigrant South Asian families, they cultivate this kind of culture of academic brilliance that you have to like be doing good in school. And like we used to have like the times table up near our dining room table, and like we'd be eating dinner, and my dad would be like, "Mash, what's 12 times 5?" And I'd be like, 50? 60? So yeah, secondary was great. I had a bit of an identity crisis. So naturally, the demographic of people in Southend, and we were talking about this before, is about 80% at that time. It's 80% white, I'd say, 10% Asian, 10% other, being Eastern Europeans and the like. And so I struggled with who I was as a person. There's this concept that I was reading when I was at university, which is this double sense of non-belonging. And I think most immigrant children can associate with that, in the sense that, I was too Western for my parents' community or the Asian community, but too Asian for the Western community. I used to wear hijab when I was younger, so I really wrestled with trying to assimilate with my friends who were all white, some ethnic minorities, when I was younger. And then I think year 10, I had my rebel year, if you like. Year 10, 11 was when I knew that I was going to do well, because I put the hard work in, and then I just kind of, not chilled, but like I knew I was going to do okay. So like it was fine. And then A-levels, which was, we don't talk about A-levels. Hardest year of my life. We move past A-levels, we forget that period. But yeah, so that was Southend. And then, like I said before the podcast, most of my childhood was either Southend at home with the friends in the local area, or in South London. So at my aunt's house. So every holiday, half term, Christmas, Easter, summer, we'd be in Sydenham, Crystal Palace, with my cousins, all boys, like 5 boys, 1 sister, with 5 girls, 1 brother. So it was a big mesh of like siblings. They were a lot older than us. And again, back then, we didn't really have money to go out, so we'd make our own entertainment at home. And you just think of weird and wacky ideas. And like I said, my cousins are like 5 to 7 years younger, so I was like 8 and they were like 15, 16. And they're proper boys, so they literally wrestle you to the ground. And there was one game that we used to play, called the sandwich game.
I feel like I played a similar game.
Yeah.
Tell me about
The
this.
sandwich game, where basically we just made it up, but basically we would, you'd basically put your hand up if you wanted to be suffocated by all the cousins, and you'd basically would steal all the duvet covers from every bedroom, go into the cupboards, and basically you'd lie on the bed and you just put duvet over duvet
That sounds
until you're
very
like
fun, I can't
struggling
lie.
to breathe. But that was the pinnacle. That's when you're like, yeah, great. And then to top it off, everyone jumps on you, so you're getting trampled on whilst struggling to breathe. And then the kind of final moment is you put your hand out if you need to get out. But we'd play that on repeat from like 12 to 6 p.m. every day until it was like we'd have a break for lunchtime, go back and play. So yeah, family I think is probably family and friends locally, and family in London that I really associate with childhood.
Going back to your secondary school years when you felt like you were having an identity crisis. What was your relationship like with your sisters at that point in time? Given that you and your sisters were underneath the same roof, came from a similar background, did like your sisters also relate to this struggle? Was it something that all of you kind of experienced to varying extents? But like, what was your relationship like with your sisters during that period of time?
Yeah, so we all started wearing hijab pretty early on. So we all started when we were in year 7. And that was just kind of a given edict from my dad that you'd be wearing hijab, and we kind of didn't question it. Our experience at school, I think it got easier through the generations. So my sister's experience, my older sister's generation, was pretty difficult. She experienced a lot of Islamophobia, where people were physically, ripping off her hijab at school. Fortunately, I didn't experience anything like that. But she was there to kind of, if anything, pre-warn me of things that could potentially happen and what to do if those situations arose. If anything, the comments that I would receive at school were just boys trying to be funny, crack a joke here, there. So in the early secondary school years, 7 to 9, really struggled. Like I said, year 10, 11, where I actually, had my own voice, I could kind of throw it back with a bit of banter, so it kind of, shielded my insecurity in that way. In terms of how my sisters, we all just stuck together. We just knew that it was something that we had to get through, and there was always going to be light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to be hopeful, because if you're not hopeful, it can be quite a bleak experience. But luckily, the friends that I had made it. So actually, they saw past the hijab. They're just ignorant to it. So long as unfortunately, as a visibly as a visible Muslim, your role is to represent as much as we like it or not. And once you break down that wall of ignorance, actually they realise that you're exactly the same. So once that was broken by year 7, year 8, the rest of secondary was fine. I think it was more outside in society is where I struggled. So I used to go to Arabic classes every weekend after school, and it's quite sad now when I think about it, but it is what it is. I used to wear the abaya, but I used to have to walk past a pub on the way to the masjid. And so what I used to do is I used to tuck that abaya into my jeans, so it looked like I'm wearing an English outfit, walk past the pub. As soon as I get to the road, drops, and I'm like, do you know what I mean? So like, it's sad now when you think about it, but you had to do what you had to do, just because I just didn't want to have those comments. I didn't want to have sneers and so on and so forth. Now, I mean, the demographic of Southend has changed completely. So it's, if anything, it's flipped. So we've had, I'd say, well, not flipped, but entirely, but like 60% now Black, Asian, Afro-Caribbean, whatever, less so. I think more because people are moving out of London for cheaper accommodation, better value in the outskirts. So the local community are more accustomed to seeing people of different backgrounds. When I was in school, it was not the same. But no, you just have to stick together.
If you could speak to your year 7, year 8, year 9 self right now and kind of give comforting words, or just speak to them and give them kind of words of advice or guidance, what would you say to them?
Good question. Never really thought about that. I'd probably say, don't give up. Keep going. keep your head down, and you'll be fine. Yeah.
What do you mean by keep your head down?
As in, like, stick to your own lane, don't diverge, you know what you need to do. I think I was very tunnel vision in my attitude to learning when I was at school, goals, ambitions that I had. So I knew that this is an end that I need to meet. What is the means to that end? And how do I get there? And that's largely what determined the decisions that I've made since I'm older. Again, lots of tunnel vision, know what I need to get done. And then when it's done, I can relax. Pros and cons to that, I suppose.
Aside from kind of academic brilliance, like what were you striving towards? Like what was the vision you were working towards? Like what kept you studying so hard at school? Was there a vision?
Well, I suppose education, it is a means to an end, right? It's a way out. It's a way to freedom. And I don't know how you define freedom, whether that's financial freedom. My earliest memories from when I was 10 was always to relieve the financial pressure of my parents. So we struggled a lot when we were kids. And it's crazy because now that I have a sister who's 10 years younger than me, to see her childhood experience and my childhood experience, when me and my mum discuss it, she gets quite emotional. But I'm like, Mum, it's actually, you should see, we've actually been able to flip our life around. So a lot of my decisions, from A-level subjects through to the job that I've done for the last 4 years was primarily to relieve the financial pressure of my parents. Not because I had a genuine interest in it, more because I thought, this is what's going to get me there in the quickest way possible. And that's really what determined my decision making when I was younger.
If you could go back and put yourself in the position before you made that decision, now, would you make the same one?
No, because to see how our lives have changed now, I would not change for anything. Because, funny story, so when we were at school, we used to have packed lunch to school, and every now and then when we wanted school dinners, because all our friends are getting school dinners, I'd ask my mum, can I have £1 or £1.50 for school? And she'd struggle to find £1.50. I should take from my dad's wallet, and then obviously naturally there's 4 of us. So if I'm having school dinners, then everyone wants school dinners. So then it's not just £1.50. It's a lot more money, and so she struggled to give us all school dinners. The other day, my sister, who's 15 now, she was going to the cinema with my friends, and my dad slipped her a cheeky little £10 note, and I was like, sorry, what? £10. And then as she was leaving, my mum gave her another £10 note. I was like, 20 great British sterling to go to the cinema. And more time, I'm saying to her, I'm like, yo, can I borrow a little £1? Chris from the corner shop, and she's like, all right, cool, I'll give it to you. So it's now the roles have reversed, but it's so beautiful to see my parents not have to worry. And it's not to say that we're ultra wealthy, it's just more that we're financially free in a way that they can actually allow us to experience those things, like going to the cinema, which I didn't go to till I was 16, just because we didn't have the funds, or if I had to ask, I'd have to pre-plan how I'm going to ask mum to give me that £10 to go to the cinema. So I probably wouldn't change a thing, just because of how beautiful it's turned out. Alhamdulillah. It's your kind of, I suppose it's your upbringing, your childhood that really determines your future. So no, I'd probably change the career path that I took more than anything. But again, it got me to where I needed to be. So, like I said, tunnel vision. I knew what I needed to do to get there. So, alhamdulillah.
You've talked about your sister who's 10 years your junior, and you've got 4 other sisters.
And a brother.
And a brother.
Yeah.
Lest we forget.
Let's not forget.
Yeah, he's outnumbered in this family.
I dislike on the YouTube. I can see it already. Tell me a bit about your relationship with them from young Southend to how it is now and how it's developed.
So with the younger one, I'm more like her parent, but also sister. So she uses me as a conduit to get through to my parents, because I know that I'm the favourite child. So even my older sister, will come to me and be like, yeah, how can I chat to mum about this? I'm like, this is how you need to phrase it. And,
Close the door. Let me chat.
Yeah, even yesterday, my younger sister goes to me, you're now back from Dubai, so can you tell me how I need to talk to dad about, this? So for the younger sister, it's kind of 50% kind of, like her parents, I'm really like involved in, I try to be as involved in her education as I can be. And then also a sister, so with that comes, because she's grown up with older siblings, she can give it as much as she can take it, because she's heard it from us, right? So she's a lot more resistant to kind of insults. So she'll insult me, and I'm like, hold on a second, have some respect. But it's fine. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to see that she can say that without fear of like. Because I remember when I was younger, and I'd say anything about my elders, yeah, it's a long day for you. And then my other sisters, yeah, we're just good friends. Like they'll come to me, ask me questions. I'll go to my older sister. She's now moved out with her husband, and if we have any idea to bounce off one another, we'll bounce off one another, just because we have different way of executing things, different thought processes, and so yeah, it's great to have so many siblings. I don't know how people are an only child or just have one sibling, but no, yeah. And my brother, he's just the to be honest, he is the favourite child of my parents. Only son, king of the house. And he knows it. But no, he's great as well. He's like another sister. Can't lie. Yeah.
What's your relationship like with your dad?
With my dad? Yeah. So my dad's become a big softie in his age. So when we were younger, he was very much working all the time. We didn't really see him as much. And he was kind of the unspoken disciplinarian. So whilst he wouldn't tell us what to do, we knew what he expected of us. And it was like that. I'd say the last 5 to 6 years or so, we've become closer, just more because of his ability to rely on me. I think when I was always at university, we were still the children, we were still in education, not earning. Since graduating from university, I can now contribute to the household. I can now do things for him that I otherwise could not have done when I was younger. And my dad had a lot of reliance on his friends. So, I'd like to say that my story is not dissimilar to most immigrant families, in the sense that, we grew up and dad couldn't read letters. And so he'd get, his friends would come home, they'd read the letters. I'd be writing letters to the council. My older sister would write letters to the council. And we tried to decipher what was being said by these letters. Now it's a beautiful feeling, because it's a bit jarring at times, because I'm in a meeting and he'll come knock on my door and be like, can you read this text for me? And I'm like, you can read the text, bro. You're just being lazy. But it's nice, because he's not ashamed. I think when we were younger, it really affected him, because he was ashamed to come to his children for help. Whereas now he's very comfortable to come to me and say, can you do this? And now, because there's so many of us all working, studying, we can kind of delegate that across the siblings. Well, we've become closer in age, and he's such a girl's dad. All my friends say it, like you can tell he's a girl's dad, because he's just very emotional, very expressive, and just like, yes, so when I came back from Dubai, he goes to me, he knocked on my door yesterday morning. He goes, I can't say it's in Bangla, but in English, the translation was like, hi, sweetie. And I was like, hi, Dad. He was just like, and I was in a Zoom call. He's like, can I talk to you? And I was like, 5 minutes, Dad. And he goes, okay, fine, I'll wait outside. And he waited outside for 5 minutes, and then I spoke to him. But it's very sweet of him to do, rather than, I can imagine 20, 30 years ago, Dad would probably shout my name from downstairs and expect me to come down, whereas now he's knocking on my door, So our relationship, I think, with my dad has definitely grown. He's the same with most of my siblings, just a softie, really.
How does that make you feel?
How does that make me feel? Yeah, it's beautiful. It's genuinely, it's a bit long when he's feeling ultra emotional, and I'm just like, all right, grow up, mate. Like, come on. But I wouldn't change it, because I'd much rather him be expressive and tell me how he feels rather than hide it away, which I know a lot of my friends' dads do. They don't like to show vulnerability, whereas my dad will come to me if he's stressed and say, this is what I'm stressed about. Can you help me? It's a good thing.
What do you think that transition of your father is down to?
I think it's an acknowledgement that you don't have to conform to society's expectations of you. So when he was younger, when we were younger and he was a lot younger, had this expectation of what it was to be a man in the Asian community, what role he had to play, what type of job he needed to have had. And for a number of reasons, he couldn't achieve that. And that impacted him a lot. And, community members would say certain things. I think the older he's gotten, he's realised that actually we don't necessarily need to conform. I can do the job that I enjoy, so long as I'm providing for my family. And that's it. And he's just let down. I think it's when you stop conforming, similar to people our age, when you stop caring about what people think, you can actually it's a breath of fresh air. You just relax. And he knows that he has the support of all of our siblings. So I think he's just, all the stress has kind of gone from his shoulders. Yeah.
So earlier on, you said, let's skip A-levels. So we're not going to do that.
Oh, no.
I mean, we can if you want, but...
Yeah, it's calm.
So talk to us about A-levels. How was MASH during A-levels?
So I don't know what your A-level experience was like, but it's probably the hardest 2 academic years of my life. University was a breeze compared to A-levels. More so because... So I went to like a comprehensive state school when I was younger, when I was in secondary school. And then I knew the route into Russell Group universities was to go to one of the grammar school sixth forms. So I tried my best to get into one of those, which I did. And so that was a cultural shock for me, because a lot of and it was an all-girls school, mixed sixth form though, but all of the girls that had studied there had their own friendship groups already formed. I spoke a certain way. I was corrected nearly every day as to how I spoke, and naturally my accent, you don't realise how subconsciously you change your accent by your environment. And so, man, when I used to say something and then man, and then one guy used to go to me, but am I your man though? And I used to be like, and so that filtered out of my vocabulary as I entered sixth form. And so all of these girls were aspiring for Oxbridge and the Russell Group universities. So it just went up a level in terms of like academic achievements. And so, like I said, I knew that I only had one goal, which was to go to university and excel in all my grades. I was not here to make friends. Not in a brutal way, just more so no one wants to be my friend. It kind of sounds really... no one wants to ask. But no, more so because I wasn't interested in developing friendships, because I just knew that I needed to get to university. Fortunately, I did, and actually... one of my closest friends from sixth form I still speak to on a daily basis, or not daily basis, but we touch base every now and then. Life's busy, Southend. But no, I made friends through my sixth form experience. But I was, again, very tunnel vision. I just knew that I had to get the grades to get to university. And yeah, so I used to, like I said, wake up super early, study, come back, study. And it worked out because I got into university, which is the only goal that I had. I don't know, how was your A-level experience? Based on Saladin's laughing, I'm assuming that's either very similar or very dissimilar.
Yeah, I mean, let's kick things off. You said the hardest 2 years. For me, it was 3 years. So already that gives you an indication.
Yes, that time.
It was a mix of many things. My first year was incredibly fun. And talking about environments, I would say I was in an environment where there was no expectation. And so an expectation had to kind of come from outside of the institution, whether that's the home or, I don't know, wherever, like someone's unique personal ambition. And so it was kind of all on you in a sense. I think when I look back at it, I needed that year of just inhibition to kind of realize the position I was in that, like, this is a moment in your life where you don't need to be here anymore, whereas school you do. I needed that year to calibrate what and where I wanted, what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And so I regarded those 2 years after that first as an opportunity. I used those to like really explore what it is that I want to do, what I'm actually interested in, and kind of like rediscover that. Because I think the first year that was not part of, it was not even in my mind, like, what subject do I enjoy? Do you know what I mean? That was like, how can I enjoy school? It was almost like that. How can I enjoy school? That was an alien concept. And then I think second and third year is like, wait, hold on. There may be actually things that I gravitate towards more than others, and what are they and why? And when I think of my 3 years of sixth form, what comes to mind? Suleiman?
When I think about sixth form, I think about how my history teacher that changed my life on the first day of sixth form. On the first day. So I remember going in on the first day of sixth form, and that was the day when everyone gets put into different form classes or form groups. And my history teacher, who was my GCSE history teacher from year 11, she chose me, like she kind of chose me to be in her form. So I wasn't supposed to be in her form.
You were the chosen one.
I was the chosen one.
Harry Potter! I
was the chosen one. And I felt so, I don't know, I felt very special that morning, innit? Because I just remember her saying, you're not supposed to be with them, you're with us. And then I followed her, and then we went to
VIP access.
VIP. And I was like to the people that was in my form, like, I'll see you lot later. Man. I'm out of here. And yeah, she was such a mentor during my time in sixth form. She kind of believed in me and gave me the kind of the confidence to kind of have lofty goals and kind of say that I'm going to study here or I'm going to apply and aim for these types of kind of institutions. And yeah, and then in year 13, she left. She went to go teach in Spain. And that was part of the hero journey because she'd gone now. So I was left by myself. Do you know what I mean? It's like when the sensei or the master, they've gone now. So I need to kind
You're
of
flying your
get cracking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I need to, yeah, man, apply the principles and lessons she taught me. And that's what I did. So yeah, that sixth form was very formative experience.
Wow.
Could you ever see yourself becoming a teacher one day?
So I did teach. So I taught Arabic to babies, though, 4 to 5 year olds. So I was having a serious crisis at the bank that I was working at for the last 4 years, and I really struggled with having some, I suppose, closeness with the religion, just because it's such a fast-paced environment, a corporate environment. You don't have time to be thinking about other things. And so I actively chose to go teach at the masjid, and I taught 4 to 5 year olds Arabic, just the basic fundamentals of Islam. Let me tell you, never again. More so because, it's beautiful introducing Islam to these children, but the perseverance and persistence that you need to get a concept across really requires a skill, and it's a skill that I don't think I necessarily have. It was more, I loved seeing the innocence of children, and actually when they would ask questions about Islam, it's their first interaction they've had with such an abstract concept. And so I tell the story all the time, but when we'd finish in the afternoon of the Salah, and I'd have all my boys standing next to me. So the boys would stand and pray with me, and the girls would be praying behind me. And they're, again, 4 or 5 years of age. And when the adhan would go off, they'd be like, Ustada, is that Allah? Is that? And it's just so beautiful. And like another one of my students would be next to me giving a Chinese burn to his sister. And like we're all trying to pray. But it's just so beautiful because their innocence is just so pure. But on the other hand, teaching them and having them maintain their focus for a good solid 2 to 3 hours was a challenge. I could probably see myself teaching older children, so like GCSE onwards. Babies, not necessarily my forte.
Interesting. What age, if you were to be a teacher, Suleiman, would you teach?
Year 10, year 11.
Yeah.
year 9 maybe. But year 9, it's hard to keep them focused. But year 10, year 11, year 12, year 13. Yeah. Yourself.
Yeah, I would never do secondary school, man.
Ever.
When I think of my secondary school and me, I would not want to teach me. I would not want to teach any of my friends.
Why?
That's long. Do you know what? Like, I say that facetiously, but to be honest, it's quite a selfish answer in that I don't think a secondary school teacher gets given their due, because you don't only have to teach the person, you have to like take into account all the myriad issues or challenges that they're facing outside of the classroom. And at secondary school, not only is that complex for them, it's going to be even complex for you because you're not in their world. And so you're almost a teacher and a guidance counselor. And I feel like while in a sense there's always an element of mentorship as a teacher, I feel it's this most acute in secondary school. And I suppose specifically when I think about the secondary school I was in, or like the types of secondary schools that me and my friends went to, it's like you have such a responsibility. When I think of like the things that people went through in secondary school and like how to deal with that and then how to break that down and like how to kind of help people, it's just,
isn't that where you can have the most impact then?
Like I said, it's a selfish answer because it's like I don't underestimate what that is. Like I know how weighty it is, and I suppose you mentioned, Suleiman, you mentioned the history teacher that said he's gonna come with me into my sixth form, yeah. And when you said that, what that made me think is, like a few years ago, I would think of you and how you would feel, right? I feel like now, when I hear that story, that anecdote, I think about the teacher and the fact that they are going about their life and they don't have to do that. But they have not, what they've done is like a series of things. One, they've made the decision that I want Suleiman in my sixth form. Two, they either have the authority, the power, or the courage to challenge the school system in a sense and go, yeah, this is what it says on the register, but I don't care. And I'm going to get this guy in my class. And like those sets of things are not light to do, however old you are, whatever position you're in, right? And so it's like a constant, and in a sense, I suppose that's why they had such an impact on you, because it's a reflection of who they are. It's not that they're just sick at teaching or they really like history. It's like, this is a reflection of your character. Like you're willing to go beyond to do what you think is right or do what you think is the best thing for the people you're with. And it's like, to have to constantly do that, I suppose, is the most noble thing. Yeah. But then that's how I regard it. But then it's like, do I feel like I can go and do what I regard as the most noble thing? I don't know.
It's a very honest answer.
Yeah.
Let us be naive. Let me dream.
Man said, just watch Freedom Writers the day before you start.
Have you ever listened to like motivational videos or?
So I have
like
a really odd revision technique, which you're gonna laugh at. It's a really odd one. So I am my own motivational speaker.
Oh, I don't. Wait, go on. You need to send me these videos and chat to me.
No, because if I show you my phone right now,
No way.
yeah, it's embarrassing. I can't believe I'm baiting myself out like this. So the way that I study, and I've only really finessed this, fine-tuned it, I'd say the last year of university, and now because I'm studying for exams at work, this is my chosen method of study. And it's kind of speaking to myself, but teaching myself the subject. So you know how when you go to interviews, you essentially talk to yourself through the answers. You kind of create the scenario of the question that you're going to be asked, and then you answer it. The way that I now study for my exams is I will record myself lecturing this topic and record it. And so when I'm out and about commuting in London, I'm just listening to myself saying, Amash, you get this, you do this, you do that. Because I think there was a psychological study that actually you learn 4 times as faster if you're teaching a concept to someone than you are just passively taking it in from a book. If you're having to kind of digest that topic, it's a lot more easy to understand. So I'm in the tube just listening to my voice. Sometimes when I can't be bothered or I can't go to sleep, phone's on speaker and I'm just falling asleep to, I'm writing out finance and boring stuff, but like balance sheets and income statements and whatever. Wow. But so I am my own. And then sometimes when I say something stupid on the voice recorder, I'll be like, come on, Mash, you know this. Like, and so I'm talking to myself. It sounds actually like quite. It's confusing, but it works. And so when I'm doing exams, I remember that I've taught myself this, and therefore this is the answer. It's a bizarre way of learning, but
I am my own teacher. That's so cold. That's such a cold statement. I am my own teacher. I rate that.
yeah.
I'm gonna copy that, by the way.
Tell me about the first time you did that.
Oh, it was so moist because I didn't want to listen to my own voice.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, it's funny because you also pick up on the words that you use. So it's been an interesting experience because I've realised that certain words that I use, like, so one phrase that I always use is, you know. So I'm like, you know, blah, 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 you know. And actually when I'm at work meetings and I'm saying, you know, it's these people don't know. And actually my manager's picked up on it, but you can't just assume that people have this pre-existing knowledge about something. I'm like, no, it's just a filler that I have in my vocabulary. So when I first did it, I couldn't listen to my voice. And actually I'd listen to it really quietly in my room. Then you just have to firm it and you're like, is what it is. If it helps me revise, it's fine. Once I think we had like family round at my house and my mum was like, oh, she's just revising, just talking to herself in her room. And I was like, it's now become the norm. So if my family know when I'm recording, that's when I'm studying, if you like.
So you do have a podcast.
My own podcast, yeah.
Oh, sick.
In conclusion.
I'm not even joking, I have a conclusion recording too.
No way.
Yeah.
That's serious,
That's
man.
incredible.
But that's my revision technique
No,
of
I
how
love that,
I
man.
study at this moment in time.
Proper.
Do you think you could do that?
Yeah, I think I could. I think I definitely want to give it a try. I definitely want to give it a
Yeah,
try.
let me
I
know.
think it'll be difficult at the beginning, like getting used to listening to yourself, but it forces you to structure your notes in a certain way as well, as if it's a lesson plan,
Exactly.
potentially. Do you script it out? Is that
No,
how you
it's
do it?
all
Or
free, it's just free form.
so you understand it and then just speak
Well, it
it?
kind of it forces me to understand. So as I'm
Yeah.
recording, I'm like, I don't get that concept. So then I'll stop recording, try to understand it, and then I'll have to explain it to myself.
Okay.
So like I was learning, I mean, it's a numerical exam I'm studying for at the moment, but there's so many formulas. And so I didn't know how to like structure it. I've never studied for mathematical exams. I've only done history and politics. And so I was saying these formulas over and over again, and I realised, okay, there's an S here and an S here, so that means divide by standard deviation, blah, 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 blah. And it just worked out because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the way
yeah.
that I was revising.
Sick.
So, yeah, it's free form. Nothing's perfect.
It's interesting.
Have you ever used an unconventional, unorthodox way to learn something?
No, but the most effective revision strategy for me so far has been just like questions and answers. I just turn everything into a question. And like they can be the most simple question. Like you get to choose the question, right? So you can kind of it could be super basic, and then you can kind of just do that for everything. So that's kind of how I usually revise. Yeah. What about you? Have you done any unorthodox?
I wouldn't say I have. I think numbering things is something that has seeped into everything I do, basically. And I would say numbering everything. So like it puts me at ease having like on my notebook, number 1, the first module, number 2, the second module, and the name of it. And I'm just looking at it and go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. For me, a large part of like revising is making everything less intimidating.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's kind of what you do by like teaching yourself. You're kind of like, yeah, this is just
it's calm.
another
Minor.
conversation.
Yeah.
Did you know what you wanted to be when you were younger in terms of like career wise or professionally? Like, did you? Yeah.
No. I just knew that so like I said, I only knew that the goal that I wanted to meet, regardless of how I'd get there. I wasn't too sure. So I made a conscious decision to go into finance straight after university, having done a politics degree, just because I knew that was the quickest route to get to what I wanted to achieve. And so I spent 4 years in banking, and then finally had the courage to leave after 4 grueling years at that place. But I never really aspired for, I mean, if I could, when I was younger, I really wanted to go into human rights and policy making. And I had some work experience in the political realm, and I realised it's not all that it's cracked up to be. I mean, it's very quote unquote political. You have certain motivations. You have to be very sophisticated in how you message your message. And for me, it just wasn't very. Just didn't sit morally with me. And so, I mean, it's not to say that actually choosing finance is the more moral option, but actually, for me, providing for my parents was of utmost importance. So I did that for 4 years. And fortunately now, I mean, we were speaking before the podcast, but I now feel like I'm in a position where I actually can see a future in the job that I do currently. And that's taken a long time. That's taken 4 years of battling with kind of life goals, ambitions, weighing it all together. COVID was, I think, a particularly important turning point for me. I think it was for most people, because it was the one time that we actually got to be back at home, self-reflect, cooped up in your own room, really questioning whether I was doing the right thing. And for many reasons, it just came to light that actually I just needed to have the courage to leave, which is what I did during COVID.
Got 2 questions. I'm going to start with the second one. Why do you use the word courage?
Just because I use the word courage because I always thought that I would do a job that I genuinely didn't enjoy, purely for the basis of forging a life for myself that would give me financial freedom of time, and so on and so forth. And I think I don't want to say gave up, but I actually realised that there's more to life than just working. And the job that I was working at for the last 4 years took a toll on not only just my social life, but my health. There was one quite pivotal moment when I was working quite late at home, and my dad came into my room and he was like, "Why are you working?" Around like 1:30 a.m. And I was like, "Oh, Dad, one more email." It got to 4 a.m. I was still typing emails, and I was like, "This is just not sustainable." I was always that friend that was late to motives or cancelling, or like these are the chats popping off and they're having banter. I'd reply 8 hours later, be like, "Lol," and these would be like, "Jokes gone mash." And it was kind of sad because I'd never be able to like have those laughs with my friends at the time in which they were having it. So I was missing out on so many things. And then COVID came, and I, like most people in the pandemic, had a few losses. So we had quite a few deaths in my family in 2020, which completely changed my perspective of what I wanted to do with my life. I'd say it was probably the most life-changing year of my life, in good and bad ways, because actually I ended the year thinking it was the best year of my life, and I started to think it was the worst year of my life. So when I reflect on that year, it needed to happen for me to actually make that change. And largely my sisters got me through that, family got me through that, but also friends. And it actually made me reflect on the concept of friendship. Just because you always say, "Oh, you have friends here, friends there," but at times of calamity, you really do understand like who your friends are, whilst you may not speak every now and then. It's an interesting one because if you actually really reflect and deep the concept of relationships, it's beautiful because it's one that's not defined by blood. It's one that's not defined by contract or defined by money. It's just an unspoken agreement of love. And so my friends would check up on me to be like, "You good?" And because we all lived local, they'd drive to my house, or my friends in London, I'd drive up to London to see them, just to sit in the car and have PFC. Or, do you know what I mean? Like, nothing lavish. It was literally, plus it was COVID, so we couldn't be breaking laws, but like, just small, just very kind of, I mean, basic motives, if you like. Or my friends would come around and I'd be in her bed the whole day, just chatting about life, future goals, ambitions. But yeah, I think friendships are probably one of the most underrated relationships there are. And it really made me cherish it a little bit more than I probably did when I was working at the place that I was working at, just because it was so fast paced. How would you describe yours and Southend-on's friendship?
Nah, that would take a
Look
long
him,
time.
look him in the eyes and say it. Let me make this hella awkward.
That's it. Turn the music up. Nah,
I'm
man,
sorry.
I think-
Just genuinely, just
you know what?
friendships.
To be honest, yeah, like recently when I went away from Umrah for my
Yeah.
trip,
Yeah.
Southend, I had to call up someone to take my place tutoring, because I do like voluntary tutoring every 2 weeks through Team Upside. So just kind of having someone that you can kind of call upon, rely upon, and kind of like just know that they'll do a good job. Do you know what I mean? They'll be there and they'll kind of cover that for you. You can only be grateful, innit? You can only be grateful to kind of have those types of people in your life. During your time in banking, those 4 years, like what did you learn about yourself during those 4 years?
One thing I learned the most, and which I'm still trying to incorporate into my current day-to-day life, is the importance of being your authentic self. And that's something that I've wrestled with for the last 4 years. And it started really at sixth form when I tried to create this identity of who I thought people wanted me to be. And so I used to associate the way that you spoke, your accent, with intelligence. So if you speak a certain way, you're more highly regarded, you're taken more seriously, and naturally, that's what I became. And a mentor at this bank said to me, if you don't see yourself becoming your manager or your manager's manager in the future, then it's not the right place for you. And I instantly, within a second, knew that I didn't want to be my manager or his manager or the manager above that. So evidently something's going wrong. And I'd have so many scenarios where lots of my friends who were in teams where they could be more of their authentic self as opposed to me. And it's probably through large fault of my own of not wanting to let down that guard and show them who I really am. And at work, we used to have cameras on our phones. So when you'd call someone, you'd see their face automatically. And so one of my friends would call me and be like, "Yo, Mash, you free?" And I used to be like, "Hi, how are you?" And my accent would just switch up. And I remember at one point, I was working quite late at work and I was by myself. And someone asked me a question. And I answered it in such a way that was so unauthentic that I was like, it's like my soul left my body and I was like, what did you just say? like I'm not even going to bait myself out how I responded to his question, but he asked me a question and I responded. And I was like, I would never speak like that. So why am I speaking like that? And so genuinely, I'm not going to bait myself out in this podcast, but I'll tell you after the podcast about how I said it or how I articulated myself. But that's when I realised that I need to stop this, because also, whilst it was a laugh for my friends and they would hear me, like I'd be meeting them for lunch and they'd be on the phone, they'd be like, "Yo, where are we meeting for lunch?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, downstairs, this place." And then someone would come next to you and be like, "Oh, fantastic, yeah, meet you at the lobby." And it was just I just felt very fake. And so the last 4 years really taught me that actually you don't necessarily have to become a complete different version of yourself. There is a hybrid, there is a middle ground. And actually, whilst being articulate does get you heard in certain situations, you can still use the same lingo that you use with your friends, subject to using it in the right context. So the last 4 years taught me that I can be my authentic self.
It's interesting. I feel like Southend, you remember that was one of the first conversations we had.
Yeah.
Kind of.
What was that? Accents?
That's one of the initial conversations me
Yeah.
and Mash had actually
Yeah.
about the way we speak and the purpose of language.
Have you both wrestled with that before, or?
Yeah, I think so. I always think about this internship that me and Southend were both on, where we visited like lots of different corporate firms in the span of 10 days or a week, and we just went to different firms every single day. And it's like you just have to introduce yourself every single day to a new kind of group of people, and yeah.
Go on, bait him out, please.
Okay, so speaking about things that are very unorthodox, right? There's this culture that exists in some corporate spaces, not necessarily all, where the way you introduce yourself in a public setting, right, is not by putting your hand up and speaking.
Yeah.
It's actually by putting your hand up, being said, yeah, and then standing up and then speaking, which is very unnatural, right?
Yeah.
And it's what you end up saying is very formulaic. So I remember, yes, I did. So I had to stand up. Hello, my name's Saladin. Hello, my name's Saladin. This is what I study. This is what you're. It's so
Staged.
It's so performative. It is
Yeah.
nuts, right? But you're kind of like, it's literally,
Has to be done.
it's theatre. It's basically
Yeah.
theatre, really.
Yeah.
And so you do it, you stand up, and then you say your thing. And then I remember I was doing this for the first 2 days, and then someone pulled me to the side and like, Saladin, what are you doing?
Trust me. You know the funny thing is, everyone started doing it as well.
Oh, really?
Everyone, this is. And I'm like, and I remember having this conversation with them, and they're like, they know that world, right? So they're like more senior. They're like, yeah, Saladin, I've noticed you've been doing this for the past 2 days. Like, I've not been doing this for the past 2 days. Like, is everything all right? Like, what are you doing in it? And I remember thinking, like, is this a prank? Because I'm like, bro, do
you're
you think
double
I want to do
guessing.
this? Yeah, I'm like, do you think I want to do this? I'm doing this because I'm expecting you guys to want me to do this. I don't want to do this. I'm like, how dare you? This is not me. This is you guys. Like, do you get me? So it was like that kind of conversation. They were like, they were very cool. So they kind of like was laughing. I was like, nah, we don't do that here. I know that other places you have to do that, but here you can
be
chill.
yourself.
You can
Let
calm
the
down.
guard.
I was like, alright, calm.
Nah, that's so funny. You know how you bring your own like prejudices into spaces, and like, you bring your own expectations of what they want.
Yeah.
So you're already trying to appease before
Yeah.
you even get before you're
Yeah.
requested.
Yeah.
I mean, but do you think your accent has played a part in the experience, the jobs that you received, the offers that you received, your university experiences, or not?
I think yes. I think the way I speak matters. I think the way I speak matters in the different relationships I have with different people. So I have some relationships where I feel like some of my friends back home or kind of younger people from my neighborhood or my local area, I think they appreciate not just my ability, but just like my willingness to kind of not mix it up, but speak to them in a way that's familiar, but not identical necessarily. Like I don't. Over time, I feel less of a need to kind of not use certain words or kind of limit my speech or like limit what I say. If that, I don't know if that makes sense, but like, I think it's good. I think a lot of the young people I kind of interact with through some of the youth work that I do, they might every now and then kind of say I speak well or I speak differently to kind of how they used to kind of people in the area to speak, but at the same time there's a familiarity there as well.
Yeah.
So it's like as long as I feel like I'm authentic to myself and I'm using the words that I would use in different spaces, then I'm cool with that. I think when me and Saladin first had this conversation, I was quite like pragmatic about it, and I used to always think about it in a sense of the purpose of speech, the purpose of communication is to kind of be received and be listened to. So in a way, it makes sense to change the way you speak in different spaces because you want to be heard or received by different people. So I don't know, man. But over time, I think I've become more consistent in the way I speak, which is interesting to see.
Yeah, I think two things come to mind when I think about that. The first is what you mentioned, Mash, which is the idea of the way you speak being intimately bound up with intelligence. And the second is this idea of like who I truly am and like what is that and who decides who. Do I decide? Is it like my mum? Do you get what I mean? Is it my context? Is it my environment? So like who am I? Who do I owe a duty to be true to, and what does that look like, and who decides that? In terms of the intelligence thing, I would say, similar to what Suleiman said at the end, I began trying to aspire to speak in a certain way because I would want to be considered intelligent. The journey has been, I feel less of a need to prove I'm intelligent. And by extension, I feel less of a need to change how I speak. Not necessarily because I feel like I'm intelligent now, but it's like, it's a very narrow way to view intelligence, I would say.
I agree.
So I'm a bit more self-assured in that sense, and that I don't need to change how I speak. In terms of the who I truly am thing, I think that's the thing that I perhaps wrestled with the most, and still continue to wrestle with. And I remember in our first year at uni, Suleiman and I, that was whenever I would go to a corporate space, right, and I saw someone from across the room that I felt like maybe they had the same issue and they're here now. So how, and I would always ask them, like, how come, because when we went, it was like an ethnic minority group, right? And I would notice that when it's us in the room and there are no other like senior other figures, they would change the way they spoke to us.
Switch
right?
it up, yeah.
So I remember I would always go to when the session's finished, I would go up to them and be like, so I noticed that you changed the ways, like, how did you do that? And what do you think about that? Like, and I would always think of this idea of, is changing the way you speak self-development or jettisoning of self? Is it a form of being a better version, quote unquote, or are you actually like closing the door on who you were? And so for me, that was always the wrestle, and the idea of who I truly am is kind of bound up in that. So I wouldn't say I have like an answer, but for me, it's more like I don't need to. I suppose that's like the conclusion I've reached. Like, I think when I was in first, and I would say much of my thinking is like, I need an answer to this. I have this problem. I need an answer to this. I need someone in the world has an answer. I need to go find that person and ask them and get the answer, and then I'll be satisfied. Yeah. I suppose more and more I'm okay with not necessarily having an answer or understanding that there's not necessarily a single answer.
Yeah. Then it's just like the question is like, is who you are linked to how you speak or what you say? Saadadeen was reflecting on death in a newsletter recently. And this question is about like, after you pass away and after we all pass away and stuff, like, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be? Like, in terms of your legacy and kind of how people remember you when you leave this world, like, what would you like to be remembered for?
Oh, that's such a good question. One that was probably serving to my parents, and one that was also purposeful. So it's kind of a two-pronged answer. So living a life that had meaning and purpose behind it. And it doesn't have to be anything grand, doesn't have to be anything, whatever that may be, whether that would be serving my parents, serving my community. If I ever had the privilege of becoming a mother, serving my children, and ultimately serving Allah, obviously. Yeah, I think that would be it. It's there's so many things that we all want to achieve, but I think ultimately it would be one where I would die a happy person, knowing that I made my parents happy and I fulfilled their dreams as much as I were able to fulfill mine. And yourself?
Similar answer, to be honest. Just kind of being of service. I think that's kind of, that's a big one. And kind of being someone that gave a good example to the people that was around him. Yeah. Yourself?
I feel like this is a question where it depends on the day you ask me, I might have a different answer. I think of one word, and that is thoughtful. Someone that has lived life thoughtfully. Yeah.
I think you smashed all of answers. That's a really good answer. Yeah.
Yours two's are getting edited out. Straight to the money.
That's it. I want that one. This was a sick conversation, man. I hope you enjoyed it.
Is there anything before we?
No, it's just been great.
Yeah.
And it was less daunting than I thought it'd be. Yeah. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for
our
sharing
pleasure.
the space with us.
Like, subscribe,
Comment, share.
Read
the newsletter.
Exactly, yes. Someone that reads the newsletter. But yeah, man, that's it. It's a wrap.